The current problems of hospitals can be seen as starkness, hospital-specific coldness, and poor performance of screening clinics. I proposed 3 conceptual solutions to these problems. First, we plan to solve the fundamental problem by reflecting the concept of horizontal, and I want to create an emotional space by emptying the filled space. Finally, I planned a hospital that is not like a hospital with emotional space by bringing nature into the building. The plain zoning of the current hospital was separated into 5 functions: outpatient, supply, management, and ward, and placed around the void in the center. However, if this principle is reflected in the pandemic era, there is a difficulty in spatial isolation, and it is disadvantageous to block access from other spaces. Secondly, we are providing nature to patients in the ward by placing functions except for the ward on the lower floor of the podium and utilizing the podium rooftop as a green area. When this principle is incorporated into the pandemic age, patients in quarantine with limited green, location, and level cannot feel nature. Third, it is a tower-shaped hospital room with a vertical shape. It provides short movements by organizing patient and physician movements vertically. Similarly, applying this principle in the pandemic age poses a high risk of secondary and tertiary cross-infection due to the occurrence of cross-straight due to vertical cross-straight. First, we divided the mass in the existing principle and connected the flow using the bridge principle. The center's void acts as the backbone for connecting the 4 masses. If this principle is applied in the pandemic era, it is possible to block the bridge to prevent mass fluidly. The flow of movement will continue through the mass of the center. Next, we actively used the country yard, terrace, and rooftop garden to bring nature into the building. When an infectious disease occurs, there are various levels of greenery, so you can feel nature even in quarantine. Lastly, it is the principle of maximizing the possibility of creating emotional space and the fluidity of space by planning horizontal movements. Lastly, it is the principle of maximizing the possibility of creating emotional space and the fluidity of space by planning horizontal movements. This principle can minimize the chance of secondary and tertiary infections in the event of an infectious disease by minimizing the crossroads. Yeosu City, Jeollanam-do was selected as the site for this project. Yeosu City has recently emerged as a tourist destination due to the pension project, so it is visited by many tourists. Along with Yeosu Airport, it also has a train station and port, so transportation is also good. However, Yeosu City lacks medical institutions, and there is no center specializing in infectious diseases. More specifically, we chose a place that has good access to the center of the city, but maintains a reasonable distance away from the city. Mass process. First of all, I formed a suitable volume on the site and separated the mass. The bridge enables flexible integration with the mass of the center. Finally, we planned to relocate the spaces around the place so that green areas could flow in. I will define the mass in the middle as a shortcut core. Normally, the circulating and shortcut cores that occur due to horizontal copper lines are formed. In the pandemic era, there will be a fluid flow as the bridge blocks isolate the mass and the movement continues through the shortcut core. This is the layout of the architectural application of these concepts and principles. The function, which serves as the center of the 4 divided functions, was placed in the shortcut core to induce the function to be distributed. The emergency room was placed in the northwest with the best accessibility, and the outpatient department was placed on the main road in front. Infections, specialized in infections, were placed inside the land, leading to no overlap of movements with ordinary patients. And I placed the management function on the remaining mass. From the perspective of the plane, the functions of the hospital except the ward were distributed around the shortcut core. until the third floor. The bridges connecting to the shortcut core mentioned earlier provide a shortcut route, which is expected to allow for fluid isolation and blocking. From the 4th to 6th floors, it's the ward. In the ward, the shortcut core will serve as a convenience facility, drawing a community of inpatients. We plan green areas throughout the hospital by applying the keyword of relocation. The center of the four masses was placed to create a vertical green core, and the terrace was placed in the empty spaces created by major functions entering the center, rearranging the space from the function to the emotional part. Lastly, it's the design part. We applied the frame design to the void space in the center created, while separating the mass. It has the meaning of solving the problem of filling the hospital today by emptying it. The frame design also features that enable the flexible movement of the bridge. I thought of a simple design that avoids excessive design in the elevation part shown from the outside. Due to the characteristics of the building called the hospital, the design was simply constructed with horizontal louvers indicating horizontality, because excessive design has a negative effect on patients. Generally, the 30-year cycle is called the first generation. Hospitals in Korea started to enter in the 1980s, and now is the second generation. I just proposed one principle in hospital architecture for the second generation and wanted to raise the direction. We hope that hospital architecture will no longer be a rigid and functional approach, but create a second generation, devising various directions and new principles. Thank you very much.